Hello again, I am Blunty. So, I played Division 2 at E3 last year in a private media session. Put up a video about that, linked in the down below area if you missed it and you're curious. But a few days ago, I played 4 more hours of it right here in Aussie land at Ubi's local offices. Offices? That's not the word I'm looking for. Offices. The place where they work. Accompanied by some of the people responsible for making the thing in the first place, and on the promise that I wouldn't tell you or show you if anything broke, because we were literally the first media types to be allowed to play this very recent build of the code. They were a little bit nervous about it all falling apart. But in a few days' time, there's an open beta where all of you can try it for yourself and tell me if your feelings match mine here in this video. Now, did things go a bit wonky? Of course they did. The code isn't all nailed down. It's not done yet, but was it a disaster? Nah. Things that did go wrong, which as I said I'm not allowed to tell you about or show you, were just little things one might expect to happen as a developer polishes up a multiplayer game like this. No big deal, no big dramas. But as for the game itself and the smoothly running no problemo stuff I am allowed to show and tell, well, you're looking at it and I'm telling it. A couple of things worth mentioning right off the bat. I'm going to make my usual excuse about being forced to play a shooter with console controls, so my aim is a little bit sloppy at times. Now, we were playing on Xbox One dev units, and while the recording devices we were provided were churning out 1080p 60 files, the game itself was filling half of those FPSs. That's 30 for you. I'm not terribly good at math, which is pretty much what you might expect on consoles. That said, aside from a few hitches here and there, again, as you'd absolutely expect on non-final code, the game itself felt pretty damn fluid, actually. Another thing worth noting at this point, these kinds of real-world militaristic shooters that rely heavily on cover mechanics aren't something I, personally, play a lot of. So in the gameplay you're watching, if you see me playing run and gun dumb, well, I tried to restrain my instincts and focus on playing more conservatively than my inner 80s action movie star wanted to do. Forgive me if you are a hardcore Division player and you think my gameplay is horrifying to watch, that's okay, it probably is. And I do have to admit that I did not play this sequel's predecessor, though after its rocky start, of course, I've heard fantastic things from people I know who play it, among them a member of my own audience here who loves it, well, this much. So while this commentary might not be super useful to existing Division players as far as any insight I can provide about the evolution of the game in its sequelized form, I can at least provide some useful talk for people who are thinking of jumping on board here, who, like me, didn't play the first one. The devs have talked long and hard about what they learned from the previous game and how this builds on it and sprouts off in some new directions, and their plans for ongoing content as we move past the launch window. It churns along on the Snowdrop engine, which is a good thing. It's coming to PC, PS4 and Xbox. The setting is basically a post-apocalyptic Washington DC in the summertime. And you're playing as part of, well, it's basically a civil war between survivors trying to rebuild some society niceties. And of course, the requisite bands of evil marauders who are all about pinching stuff and killing folk and the kind of naughty stuff that makes you feel better about shooting them in the face all day long. The core game revolves around opening up sections of the map by capturing and clearing and controlling key locations and, well, okay, if this sounds familiar, let's just get down to tacks here. It's an Ubisoft game, and it's quite a lot like many other Ubisoft games in that manner. It's a solid formula that Ubi seems to like a lot and seems to work for them, so... But it's the mechanics and the setting that sets it apart from, say, Far Cry New Dawn, itself a game with RPG elements in a post-apocalyptic setting with good guys trying to rebuild society against an evil horde of raiders and similar factions. Division 2 is much more tactical, slower, more deliberate, more careful, more militaristic. You can run solo or in squads of 4, and there's raids, which can stretch to 8-player teams. It's also a looter shooter, of course. There's a lot of focus on RPG elements of building out your character with different loadouts of your preferred weapon types, your preferred weapon combinations, to suit your gameplay style and the team requirements. You've also got armor and gadgets like drones and this kind of little explosive Roomba thing that follows you around, and as you go through the game you'll get presented with the option of one of 4 specialist classes, each with their own speciality. So after playing through the opening game stuff, we were asked to select a specialist and we were kicked into some endgame stuff against much more aggressive and well kitted out factions of enemies that only move into the map at the endgame. And to say they kicked our necks in is putting it softly. The difficulty spike in moving from early game to end game caught us all by surprise, I think. But although we never quite got through the mission in the time we had, we were doing better and better each time we ran through it, which tells you everything you need to know, really. The difficulty spike is natural, is organic, and not a cheap and nasty, just buff the enemy HP kind of trickery. Anthem. Each time we ran through, we played smarter, we anticipated the enemy AI better, we learned better ways to take down different kinds of opponents, we learned where their weak spots were, how to outflank them, what to expect in the coming waves. It brought into sharper contrast what I had already seen in the early game. As with all good looter shooters, this is about learning the game through repetition, and repetition. And repetition, experimenting with different tactics, different gear loadouts and combinations, different team strategies. You also have to keep in mind, by the way, as you watch the gameplay, the team, such as it was 3 content creators, all trying to get their own footage, and 1 Ubisoft Australia employee, and while 2 of them have played Destiny together before, there was no pre-existing team dynamic or the instinctive cooperation that comes with that. So, as a team, we weren't being super good with being familiar with communication, what each other was capable of, what each other was sort of expected to do next and anticipating to do next, which of course helps out immensely in games like this. Mechanically, I loved the gameplay. It felt like a nice balance between sort of me feeling vulnerable with just enough arcadey fun to make me want to push my luck, which is why you see me breaking cover and trying to Rambo the room sometimes like an idiot. Environmentally, it's stunning. I can hardly wait to see it in 4K on PC, because even on the Xbox, it was pushing out wonderfully gritty and moody environments with tons of detail and had a good sense of purpose and a great sense of location. And speaking to the map and general level design of the open world map, I never once hit an invisible wall or a strange obstacle. I could go anywhere that made sense I could go. I could go anywhere I want to go. I could jump over anything I expected to be able to jump over. I could hide behind everything I was expecting to be able to hide behind. And moving through the streets and side streets and alleyways, it wasn't even something I was actively thinking about until afterwards, and I realized just how instinctively I was moving through the city and through the tight corridors. And as you've been seeing, of course, sometimes the game is bright and colourful and sunny and atmospheric, and other times it's very, very dark and tight and nearly monochromatic. Each location at each time of day and each weather condition has a very distinct and crispy feel while still maintaining a sense of continuity as you move through them. And that's some wonderfully clever design. The UI was nice too. A good amount of useful information was presented, and tracking my teammates' location and relative positioning was easy. Quest markers were easy to follow, and it was presented all quite cleanly. I was never lost or confused about what needed to be done next or where I needed to be next, at least not for long, and everything just kind of flowed rather naturally. And all of this spoke to a game that's been designed with great care and great purpose. All that said, as I opened with, this kind of extra care, tactile type shooter isn't my usual bread and butter. Personally, I like a bit of wackiness or sci-fi or even fantasy in my looters and shooters and action RPGs, so I'm not sure I'll personally be on board in the long term here. I don't know if the tone here will help capture me into the long-term looter-shooter grind. But as I said over half a year ago when I tried it first at E3, it's so mechanically satisfying the way it feels, the way it sounds. I'm very eager to give it a try, a big fat double try in fact, to see if it can ensnare me. I'm inviting it to romance me. The devs at the demo session were quite passionate too about their plans for ongoing content, as like the first Division game, they plan to keep Division 2 alive and thriving, with hopefully a happy and active community, for quite some time. And given how they turned around the rocky start for the first one and turned it into a very successful game, I feel like Division 2, with its inherently much stronger starting strides, is going to be very promising indeed. Time will tell, of course, and as I mentioned, with an open beta happening in just a few days from when this video goes up, you can try it for yourself and come back and tell me how you feel about it. Thanks for watching, I am Blunty, and I will catch you next time.